Hey y'all, welcome back to Key is King. Today we will be picking up in my series, The Token Black Friend. We are on part 2 today, part 2 of 3. If you watched part 1, I appreciate you. I appreciate you even more for coming back for today. Where we left off in part 1, we were just getting to a point where I was talking about my white friends saying the N-word just as frequently, if not more, than I did at the time. And I was kind of having, during my last video, an aha moment of the timeline. Because as I described previously, I hated the N-word. By the time I was entering in high school, just kind of living my life, doing my thing. I told you guys that I was on the crew team all 4 years, and so my teammates were very, very aware of my hatred of the N-word. And just a little pit stop before we get really deep into it, I had a quick conversation with my mom over the weekend. I was telling her a little bit about my channel, the video I was making, and she brought it to my attention and reminded me that she was the reason that I really hated the N-word. My mom does not say the N-word, she never has, she still doesn't to this day. She finds it to be like a very gross, horrible word that nobody should use, that type of situation. So that explains to me a lot more why my memories of disliking the N-word were so strong and my reactions were so grand, somewhere between yelling to Lenny, aka physical harm, which I've never been in a fight in my life, but I would be physically aggressive towards people. The male team members that I had on crew, I remember one specifically, I chased him around and might have yanked his hair a bunch and hit him with a belt, maybe? Belt like fair. Oh gosh, what a time. But I have this beef with me and saying but the way it flows out of my mouth in these situations is crazy. But I digress. Back to the point. The aha moment that I had was realizing the timeline of things and how that shaped my relationship with the N-word in high school and how I got to a point where I was allowing my non-people of color friends, aka my white friends, to say the N-word so much. And that starts with the crew team that I mentioned so much. I loved the crew team. I'm going to do my best not to give disclaimers about the things that I'm saying because I don't really have to, and I don't want to do too much. This is about me sharing my experience, and once again, this is not a harmful thing. This is just the vantage point on my experience. And it's, as I said before, something I haven't ever really communicated, and I feel like I owe it to myself and anybody interested in hearing what I have to say. But enough of that. The crew team. I loved the crew team. I loved my experience overall. I wish I would have been captain my senior year. But that's small potatoes. This really doesn't matter. As I'm just remembering and reminiscing over the time, I guess. But anyway, let's see if that even makes it into the final edit. I say all of that mumbling to say that the crew team is where my token black friend journey had a major moment, a core memory, if you will. So as you guys can hear by the words that have been coming out of my mouth, I did not like the N-word. Everybody knew that. It was a well-known thing. At some point, a group of my teammates decided to get together and play what they called the N-word game. And what the N-word game was is that they would each take turns trying to get as close to me as physically possible while saying the N-word in the hopes that I did not hear them or catch them. Now, if I did hear them or catch them, obviously they would not gain a point, whatever. They were out that round. I don't really know the details. I never sat around to ask. But what I do know is that if they were successful in their mission, they got a point, and how they kept those points were tallies in the inside of our crew lockers, in our locker room. In retrospect, that's insane. I have always wondered if any adults knew of that, because in my heart of hearts, if any of our coaches knew, especially our boys coach, she would have never gone for that. She would have never ever gone for that. Or at least made it much of a bigger deal than it was. And to be quite honest, I didn't know to make any bigger of a deal than I did. I wish I would have had the retrospect and could go back to advocate more for myself, or at least like make one adult aware, even if I didn't know what would happen as a result of it. But it was one of those things, like, I think as a person of color, specifically as a token black friend, there's so much that you just take on the chin, that you pick and choose your battles over, and for many reasons. But the N-word game was one of those things. And the only reason I ever found out about the N-word game was to the credit of my friend Riley. So Riley, love you. He came up to me and he's like, do you know what's going on? Like, are you aware of what's happening? And of course, I had no clue. And I was very, very upset. And as much as upset as I knew to be at that time while handling it myself, I did. I had teammates that at the time were super apologetic, that actually like hated Riley for saying anything to me, which is asinine. But a few people went on like public apology tours within the team. Some people just, I don't think, ever really addressed it and just moved on with their lives. And like I said, I don't know if I know back then, there's no full processing of these things. There's no real accountability for these types of things. We're so young, we're so, well, not all of us, but some of us are ignorant, just immature, which that does fit most of the people that I knew I was sometimes in high school. So it's just one of those crazy things that, like, I've told people that story and they are disgusted. And for me, I'm just like, kind of almost nonchalant at this point, because what else am I going to be decades later, over a decade later? But the N-word game was, like I said, that's a core memory. That was the first time that I felt like low man on the totem pole in a way. And this is not victim hour, because I don't really feel like a victim. For many reasons. Maybe I'll make a video about those reasons one day. But yeah, the N-word game was a wild time in history. Just, if I didn't say it already, I'll say it again if I have. Just the intention, the planning, the effort that something like that takes for a collective of people to do. Even as teenagers, that just gives like mob mentality in a way, and definitely no regard for some of those people's only like black friend. Mind you, we were on the crew team, and as I said before, I was not the only black person, so if you want to like have the technicality of like, okay, if you want to consider everybody on the team friends, which you all know socially that's not the case, but yeah, I feel like I was definitely the blackest person all those people knew. So at no point was that like a no-touch zone for anybody, but kids will be kids. And I say that to say that the N-word game, I think, shifted my mentality. It was a if you can't beat them, join them thing. It was me picking and choosing a battle. It was not enough to like keep me out of my friend group, my social circle, and I can't even describe the N-word game as like my friend group per se. Members of my friend group were in that mix, but it wasn't my entire friend group that I've been like referencing in the same way. It was my team members, which were mostly from the hills of Caucasus. So I say all of that to say the N-word game really shifted my perspective and my allowance of the N-word in my space in general, and that's what got me to a point where my white friends were saying the N-word just as much as I was, if not more. And there's no telling when I say if not more, because there's no telling. Yes, the comfortability in front of me, but there's no telling what happened when I was not there. And once again, we're teenagers, and my group of friends, we're the type of people that if you were out of a room, you might miss something that might have been about you. I think that comes with the territory too. I think, and not just even like token black friend territory, I think that comes with any group of teenagers. We could all be little fake bitches sometimes. It just doesn't make it any better when you have like real shit that could leave a ripple effect, I guess. You know what I'm saying? If you don't, forget it, move on. So yeah, after the N-word game, that had to be like junior-ish year. By the time senior year was rolling around, me and my friend group were solidifying as a solid group. We had transitioned like out of high school at this point. We're spending all of our time together, and there's definitely not any other like black people around. The older we got, people had, I'm sure, and like this is once again, let me be very fucking clear in this video, I don't believe that any of my friends, old friend group, I'm not calling anybody a racist, I'm not, nothing like that. I genuinely don't believe that. I just don't think that anyone was really well equipped to handle the dynamic that was our reality over time. Between middle school, high school, college, there were a lot of things that I experienced on different scales, you know. It's one, I said this in my last video, it's one of those things that's hard to put into words, it's hard to itemize, it's hard to really go over, and there's no way I could in this video. But there were definitely times where I regularly felt like low man on the totem pole, and a lot of that you have to understand, as I mentioned in my first video, I had shit going on that I could not communicate. I was in survival mode my own way. Like, this group of friends, my friends in general, were always my safe space, but at the end of the day, I had times where I came into our dynamics with not the right energy, and I did not know how to communicate that. I was one of those people that I had an attitude, and right, wrong, or indifferent, sometimes I'd be stuck in that. I would take the energy out of the room a little bit. I can admit that, full blown. Yet and still, my experiences have validity to them. And like I said before, I'll be the first one to tell you if my shit wasn't right. And that's not what this is about. This is not about a blame game. Once again, this is about my experience and how, from my vantage point, things rolled out. Just being a token black friend. Everything was really good for a long time. I was happy, I was fulfilled, even with the little hiccups or tensions or unspoken hidden group dynamics that were happening. I was happy. I loved my group of friends more than anything in the world. I really did. We had some really fun times, we really did. But Black Lives Matter was the thing that did it for me. Black Lives Matter and COVID was a hell of a time in life. Now, I'm saying we as me and the collective of people that are watching this video, we know what that was like. That wasn't that long ago, quite honestly. But a couple things were happening at the same time. The world was shut down, isolated, slowed down. Things happened during COVID that probably wouldn't have happened for decades later. Socially, personally, mentally, emotionally, all the things. COVID was a weird fucking time warp in our history, as we all know, for different reasons. At the same time Black Lives Matter was happening, black people were being killed blatantly and just targeted blatantly. History was repeating itself in the most ugly way. And at that point, I felt as if, and in a lot of ways, I had endured so much as the token black friend. Microaggressions, statements that led me to feel just low, disregarded, disrespected sometimes. And I don't want to get into the weeds of all those because, like I said, that's not a game worth playing. But I'll say that Black Lives Matter and COVID really struck me in a way because I was, like I said, at this point, a lot of these people's like token black friend. And when I say that, I mean the closeness that we shared, the time that we shared. And as I said before, I don't believe that any of my friends or former close friends were racist in any way. They individually have friends of color of all walks of life. That's not the issue. But my issue that I ultimately ran into is that I had endured so much within this friend group and this dynamic, and I just didn't feel that the level of care, attention, acknowledgement, checking in on was really there, and that was hard for me. Now, mind you, like I said before, I'll always tell you a role, if any, that I play. I was having my own struggles during that time with my own blackness and feeling like maybe I wasn't doing enough for Black Lives Matter, and I still to this day feel like I didn't do as much as I could have. So I had a lot of that going on simultaneously while feeling like the people that I did have for support, the people that I would have hoped to lean on more, and I wish I could have communicated this at the time because sometimes people don't know. And I'm sure my friends had no idea, and this may even be surprising to them now if they haven't thought about this, or I don't know if it's ever crossed their mind. I really don't know. And that's the unfortunate part about the type of like hurt and pain space that I was in and often coming from earlier on in my life. So that's a whole nother can of worms. Actually, I'll be talking a lot more about that in the third part of this series. I'm going to be focusing more on me and the role that I play and have played as the token black friend. But getting back to the point, it was just a time where I felt like I didn't feel like people cared. And I'm sure that that's not the case, but I was convinced of that at the time. I went to a rally that they had in Middletown, my hometown, and for me it was the most important thing that I could have ever done at the time. I felt like I hadn't done enough to represent and be there as a member of the black community. So I went to that rally from the opening moment to the close, and a few of my friends were in the area and they came briefly. I don't even recall if I saw them at this point, but what I do know is that they came for a moment, they participated in the rally, and then via group chat it was said that they were going to dinner. And I just remember feeling at the time like we are best friends, like the best friends in the entire world. And even as a show of solidarity to me, just to stay there, to be invested. And once again, I was expecting and projecting my feelings of the matter onto them, but somewhere in my brain I was just like, damn, that was a disappointment. That was a letdown. And I let that build upon how I was feeling, and I let that be a one-way emotional like pile-on, you know? But it was something at the time that I felt like I shouldn't have to ask for, that it should have been obvious. And I allowed my feelings to be hurt. I allowed my feelings to be hurt enough to the point where I removed myself from the friend group altogether. Because at that point I genuinely felt like people just didn't care. Now I will say, to the credit of a couple people, I went back and I looked just to make sure I wasn't talking out of my ass. or having a revisionist historian moment, because that happens. We're human. Sometimes we focus on the hurt rather than the reality of the events. So I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to come on the internet and be cemented in here talking shit about, and I'm not even talking shit, but you know what I'm saying. I didn't want to be on here just speaking falsehoods, you know? To the best of my ability, I will speak the truth, and like I say all the time, I'm happy to be wrong. But looking back at what I could find, only a couple members of my friend group texted me when I left the group chat, inquired about it. I obviously stayed in contact with most of them, like here and there, but it really started to trickle off after that. And like I said, there were so many cumulative things in my mind at that point. So that trickle slowly happened, which turns into more time not talking, which turns into lines go cold, which turns into not social media friends. It just turned into one of those things where it seemed like life happened and things just moved on. And there was no real communication on either side to address what had happened. And I thought that was the end of it. I thought the days of feeling that way, feeling that hurt were over, that the token black friend era had been abandoned by all. I just thought I was over it until one of the members of that friend group got married. This is where I'm going to try to keep the petty in as much as I can, because this particular individual and I were never close. We'll say it that way. It gave frenemy from the time we were in high school. We got a gag award at Crew, actually, for being best friends, which should give you all the context clues to how we might have really felt about each other. But this person got married. Congratulations to them. And in the famous words of Tiffany New York Pollard, I wish them an ounce of luck. No, truly. That's about the nicest I can say. And the reason I even have this energy and I'm saying these things is because I was triggered by this event. And now you're going to ask yourself, how does somebody getting married possibly trigger you? And this is not a soapbox moment for me to be forever and alone. That's not what we're talking about. That's another video. But this person invited the entirety of our former friend group, including their former best friend that was not really their friend to my knowledge at the time. I'm not one to talk, I won't throw stones, but they invited what I understood to be a far removed former best friend to this wedding, and I was the only person that was not invited. And to that I'll say, you have the right to invite anybody you want to your wedding. And truthfully speaking, you probably made the right decision by not inviting me, because it just, yeah, I get it, but at the same time, it was so disappointing in so many ways and so reconfirming to so many of those like little devil on my shoulder thoughts that I've had over the years. It's one of those things when you think you have moved on from something, or at least you've fooled yourself to thinking that's the case, and then something happens and it brings you right back to that moment. And so for me, I felt many things. I felt validated, I felt disappointed, I felt some fucking FOMO, because of course everybody's happy for this person. They proceed to post about it all day and all night and do da 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 da, which once again, you have the right to, but like, no consideration for your token black lost and found friend over here. which once again, that makes me sound so like victim-y, and I'm not a victim. I really don't feel like a victim to the circumstance. I just am still trying to process and channel through that hurt, because that is adulthood now. Yeah. I thought that individual moving to Philly and coming back with a tick of the N-word was bad enough, but definitely the blatant oversight in just disregard of inclusion, yeah. I don't miss that person. But what that lack of invitation did for me was really bring back into focus that that feeling of the token black friend didn't go away when I removed myself from that particular friend group. That feeling had multiplied and shown itself in many different ways, and to an extent still does. I have certain white friends that I still feel senses of pity from, even though I've moved on from a lot of stuff. I've survived a lot of my circumstances. That type of feeling just doesn't go away with some people, I think. It's an interesting thing to navigate relationships or friendships where commonality is not in the foundation. Commonality in like human experience. There's something to be said about somebody that can understand specific human experience, the way that women can understand women, or gay people can understand gay people. Being a person of color comes with a guidebook and an understanding that often can't be explained or understood outside of deep levels of education and deep levels of communication. And when those things cease to exist, it makes it hard to navigate those waters. And that there's responsibility on both sides of that line. And that's really what I will be transitioning to in part 3 of this series. This part honestly feels a little chaotic to me. There's a lot that I didn't say. I feel like I also said a lot that I have not necessarily shared so publicly before. So I'll end this video like this because I'm almost at a loss for words, or at a loss for any more to say. But I'll say this. I hope that if anybody at any point hears something in any of my videos that causes conversation, causes a reaction of some sort, that you can be vulnerable, take the chance of opening a conversation. And that does obviously not have to be on fucking YouTube for anybody to see, but I just want to make it clear that if nothing comes out of these videos, I'm perfectly okay, and this is just a part of me and my process, but I'm open to whatever comes out from these videos. If it's positive. If it's negative, just know that a lot of therapy, actual self-confidence and reassurance is living within my body, so prepare yourself. But I'm hoping that at the very least this causes conversations for people, and it gets people talking about subjects that maybe they have yet to either talk about or get deep into. So I just hope that these videos, my channel, is a vehicle for connection, for understanding, and potential positive progression. So I'm going to end here. I appreciate all of you if you made it this far. Please don't forget to comment, like, subscribe. Check out my other content. Come back for part 3. And I'll see you soon for something. I'm sure of it.